We're just gonna go for now. Perfect.
That was across from the West.
We're live now.
Okay, welcome to tonight's meeting, January 9th, 2023. Hope everybody had a wonderful time resting, relaxing, and safe travels home. And maybe some fun times in the airport if you got hung up. We'll go around and if council members first, let's deal with any questions for tonight. Sir? No questions?
Nope, no questions. I have the questions on the parking.
Any other than what you sent in, or you want clarification, or?
Well, if I'm understanding the parking correctly, it appears to me that this is basically the city acting as the parking manager for the new downtown and the train garage. Because the amount of work that it's taking off the police is like minimal. I mean, literally, it's like 2 shifts per police officer per month. Not a shift, but 2 incidents.
You want to talk about that? Sure. Our community development director.
Dave Downing, Director of Community Development. The parking section of community development has been handling the parking management in downtown and the transit station for a couple of years now. The action tonight is to handle on-street parking throughout the entire city. So that would be the duties that we would be inheriting from the police department, thus freeing up those sworn officers that currently do that task and have it handled by non-sworn personnel in community development.
Right, I fully understand that, but I'm saying the amount of work you're taking off, okay, the police department is so minuscule, is so minute.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Councilor Baker, to speak more directly to your question, last year for 2022, the police department totaled 591 parking tickets as it related to the parking complaints. As it relates to calls for service for 2022, we responded to 3,190 parking events. So those parking events could be abandoned vehicles where somebody left the vehicle on the side of the road, could be a parking complaint as it relates to handicap parking, parking in a fire lane, parking in front of your driveway, and then the follow-up to those calls. Because some of those, based off of the ordinance, we have to wait to deal with the car 48 hours, 72 hours, 15 days. So it's not only the initial call, it's also the subsequent call. When you're talking a volume of more than 3,000 calls per year on a specific type, you're talking a significant amount of police resources that could be directed elsewhere. In relation to that, in relation to another question, it was answered by our friends and our partners in the courts. Out of the 591 parking tickets, there were 3 people that responded to court last year to have a hearing as it related to parking. So that piece of it as it relates to the court is nominal, but the workload that community development could potentially be taking off of our plate is significant. And I also think the other piece not to be overlooked with this is the fact that by community development taking this, it's one-stop shopping for the customer. Right now, it depends on, is it on street? Is it off street? Is it private property? And those are filtered through different avenues to different personnel. And I really think from a customer service piece, this is the best solution because it's one-stop shopping for the customer. They don't have to figure out, is it on street? Is it off street? Is it private property? Is it in the park? Is it in this private parking lot? It is, if it's within the city confines, this goes to community development so they can handle anything and everything.
Okay, could you quantify it? the amount of time you'd be saving. What I had looked at is I had looked at the 2,200 and the 1,300 incidences. So that's what I base it on. That's where I get, if we have 80 officers in really patrol and they do 2 of these incidents a month, that's all they'd have to do.
Counselor, I'd have to do some quick math here, but generally speaking, out of the 3,000 calls for service, it's the response time to the call and then figuring out what follow-up needs to be done. I mean, at a minimum, if you're talking a 10-minute response time, and that's a good response time for a parking complaint, 10-minute response time, multiply that by 3,190. I mean, you're talking more than probably a full-time FTE as it relates to hours, as it relates to workload. And that's not including the outcome as it relates to, are we towing the vehicle, sending the officer back out there a second time, and then impounding the vehicle. Last year, as it directly related to parking complaints, we impounded 140 vehicles. So there, we're talking at least a 30-minute from the time we get there to the tow gets there to the vehicle's impounded. The vehicle is searched and inventoried. You're talking a minimum of 30 minutes for each of those calls. So so it is a significant impact on police operations.
Okay, well,
If
That
I
may-
may, I want to add a comment there.
Please introduce yourself.
Wally Burgos, parking and TDN coordinator. So to add to those comments, because we have a parking function in community development, there are a lot of calls and emails and just contact with the community that we get that should go to the police department, but that we handle. So there is another significant amount of work that is happening. I wouldn't be able to quantify that for you tonight, but there is a significant request for abandoned vehicles, areas, parking violations that we handle in our end sometimes without even involving the police department, just because that's what we do. We manage parking. We know how parking works. We know the regulations. So there is another portion that maybe is not captured in those numbers that you're getting from the police department. So I just wanted to add that. There's also, quite frankly, a lot of issues that are not being addressed. Like I'll give you an example. Folks parking in bike lanes. It's a huge issue in some areas of the city that, we need to address. And once we make this transition, that would allow us to address certain violations that having these resources would allow it to help the community stay.
issue and because we're only transferring half an FTE to community development, right?
From the police department, yes.
Right. And if you take 3,000 incidences, but let's not get into numbers. I see this whole thing as primarily benefiting the new downtown and the train station. And the new downtown has a general improvement district, and I think it should fall under their responsibility. I think they should be the ones running it, because I don't think having 5 people in parking, it really benefits the entire city. It benefits primarily the new downtown, and yet we're going to use funds from the entire city to benefit this small section of it. And that's about $700,000 worth of expense, right?
So those numbers, if you compare the number of violations that we are issuing and just parking in general, context with the community, would be pretty even. I would say you're actually gonna realize, some efficiencies in other areas of the city, like say historic Westminster, where there are issues that need to be addressed related to parking and parking violations, and we will have the ability to actually deploy all those resources, including the one assistant parking enforcement officer that's currently enforcing parking in the downtown and the TOD, because now they will have the authority to enforce parking anywhere in the city, versus right now, they're not authorized to enforce parking anywhere else other than the downtown and the TOD. So that's what we're realizing with those changes that we're putting in front of you tonight, is actually the ability to deploy those resources, myself and the rest of my staff, to respond to anything related to parking citywide, and that is prohibited vehicles, that is abandoned vehicles. We're having a lot of issues with RVs, just being left behind in public right away, but also in our parking facilities. And that will allow us to utilize those resources citywide, not just, I think it's actually the opposite of what you're discussing here. We're actually going to have the ability to utilize all the resources that we have throughout the city. We do get a lot of questions and concerns from communities about, can we have a parking permit in this area? We have a vehicle that's been sitting here for quite some time. There's a suspicious vehicle without plates. And the difference is that now the staff that's trained to handle parking specifically will be able to go out and address those situations immediately versus, the police department having to go to their priority list and decide, is there a few other calls that are more important when it relates to safety in the community than, an abandoned vehicle or, a resident calling because a car has been sitting in front of their residence for a couple of days. And we will have the ability to follow up with them. They will be able to contact us by email or by phone, and we can get back to them, within 24, 48 hours and get those answers they're looking for and address those practical issues on the field.
How do they do the parking at the orchard?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. That is a private enterprise. If you're talking specifically about the parking meters, those mean nothing. Those are owned by a private entity that's not authorized to enforce parking. So, people like to say that it is a donation when it relates to parking in there. But they don't enforce parking. They're not authorized to issue parking citations in there. Like, we will be able to have an actual violation of the city code that will go through an adjudication process, to allow people due process and still have an opportunity to address that and to have an ability to appeal, have a hearing if needed, and then get a resolution, a final resolution.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just make sure that I understand it good, because I think I do, but because of Councilor Baker's questions. One thought I had is, this wouldn't keep the police department from obviously issuing citations if it was in front of them, correct? The other thing that, and this is more along what you were just talking about. So my understanding of this is, gives us a better ability to address some of the problem areas, such as the dog park, where I know I consistently get complaints of the unsafe parking. So I wanted to make sure that I'm clear, that I understood that correctly, that we think that will help. And I see nodding heads, so that's good in case people are listening. The other part of that, though, is I'm curious, with this moving away, obviously your department is pretty big, but you have other tasks. So that's one of the value adds. But is the customer service, do we feel that this is actually going to be enough to be able to address the customer service and actual parking issues? And is there a checkpoint that we could do down the road if this passes in order to come back and say, here's how it's going?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Vladimir. Yeah, absolutely. The way we run the parking program allows us to collect a lot of data. So, all citations are issued electronically, and you can literally go online immediately after you get your citation and enter either your license plates or the citation number, and you can immediately see the violation. You can see the pictures that the parking enforcement officer took. And so we will be able to collect a lot of data, and we'll have those checkpoints, at the end of the year, 6 months in, to kind of have an idea, how many citations are we issue. It's something that we do periodically to kind of identify, problem areas, what can we do differently. We have an exercise that we did for downtown in particular, and the signage. Some of you might remember that when we came back and look at the existing signage, what were, recurring violations, our folks not understanding the signage, and then we made some changes, and we have seen some significant improvements once we make those adjustments. But that's one really important portion of the program, is collecting data and then utilizing that data to make decisions to respond to the community needs.
That's great. Because I guess my preference would be if we could make a request if this passes, specifically areas where we've got a lot of complaints like the dog park, to see that whether or not those are decreasing so that we can show how effective we're being. Because I think ultimately part of the goal I understood you presented to us was in order to address some of those problem areas. And I want to make sure we make movement.
Yeah, I definitely have a list of areas that will be high priority for us to address and start collecting information and look at possible solutions for sure.
Right.
The dog park, it's one of those.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Mayor Pro Tem, back to your first question there's nothing in the ordinance, the way that's written, to prohibit us from impounding or writing tickets. So if we need to do that, to step in and help our partners out of code enforcement, we can absolutely do that. And then specifically to the dog park, we're looking at this as that is a value add and is going to help us out there. And then it also gets into other options that if we decide that permitting or other things that need to be looked at, that should, again, kind of that one-stop shopping, parking experts have that expertise to go in there and make those recommendations. So we think it's a value add. We will absolutely be working with them to make sure that it is a success. And then Councilor Baker, to your earlier question as it relates to the orchard, we by ordinance and by statute don't have the authority to write tickets up there now because it is private property. The only two things we can write on private property as it relates to traffic and parking are handicapped and fire lanes. So all those parking meters and stuff that are up there, those are nice suggestions as far as we're concerned.
On your point to me, Chief, I guess the one thing, and just to put it out there on the record, is that the reason I asked that is I want to avoid, to your point of one-stop shopping, if a police officer is there and they're dealing with somebody who's made the complaint, that we're not passing them off because, I think we want to avoid creating a more frustrating situation with, if somebody's complaining, there's already a frustrating situation. So I'm glad to hear that.
We will take care of it, and then we will also loop in people in community development to make sure that there's the follow-up and the continued team effort on it.
Great, thank you.
Wouldn't a better way to be handling the dog park is to make the parking lot bigger? Just saying.
Councilor Seymour?
We had a presentation on that, and the open space, it's not a dog park, it's open space that's off leash, and the open space is deteriorating significantly and cannot handle any more volume. So we've already expanded the parking lot twice. So it's the capacity of it's maxed out. So to continue to expand it would just cause more damage.
Well, and my understanding was what they saw was even when they increased, we got more traffic, but people still are parking off street where they're not supposed to park. So if we don't have the ability to go and enforce it and be serious about it, in my mind, we continue to see a problem. And I hear from residents, and I've had some of them send me videos of the way people pull in and out. If you live over there, it's super dangerous to be parking off the Sims that way.
Mayor, may I add,
Sure.
Jody Andrews here. We have an internal group from the cross-departmental group that is looking at this neighborhood and this situation right now. We are looking at all options and working through those together, and we'll be working with the community as well, continuing that work and engaging. So it is in progress, and we will bring something back to you once they've got some solutions that will work. But we are on it. This change tonight, if you approve it, does help us with that. It allows us to have some authority in the street other than police authority to follow up on some measures that we may be able to implement in that scenario. So I just wanted to add that perspective on this. In this case, in that neighborhood, we are actively already looking at options, and this would assist us with some of those options.
Also, while you're looking at that, we know that the poop problem there. So I just add that to the list because I know it's bad. Anything else? Okay, reports.
I do this past week. I attended the Commuting Solutions legislative breakfast, so be interested to hear.
Community roundtable.
Haunts us. Haunts us to this day.
It was the last meeting for Boulder County, Commissioner Matt Jones, and he made some, what I thought were some very insightful commented upon leaving, and I would recommend that every member of our council view those online and draw your own judgments from that.
And we have a lot of new faces.
Right. There were many new members and everyone showed up. They're all 8 members.
And I'll just add, there were 2,922 noise complaints, which equaled 365 households. And 161 of those were in Superior and 80 in Westminster.
Yeah, we were like the second highest for our residences bringing noise complaints to the table. And the mayor and I looked at it on the maps, and they're mostly in the donuts that the pilots use to go round and round. Other of the communities, their noise complaints are overflights while the pilots are flying to different destinations. But for our citizens, it looked like it's these touch and go donuts that make up the landing pattern and takeoff patterns for the airfield there, which makes them very difficult to address. There were also some comments about lead, but we're getting a lecture on that, so.
Councilor Evans?
I don't have anything, but is that 80 different households? Or is that from,
I didn't,
'cause I'd be interested to know if it's 80 different households versus
I cannot
5.
remember exactly, because sometimes their maps
Sure.
aren't, and then the maps show one thing and then the chart shows a different. So I don't know but they're all almost unanimously next to the airport, just to the south of the airport, just to the south of like 108th is where I saw the vast majority of them.
So out of that 80 and the 161, they were involved in the 2,922. So it means they can track how many times a household. They didn't give us that, but we do know it's 80 separate households. Because if you put in something once, you're tagged. If you do it 2 or 3 times, you're still tagged as one.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Councilor Simon?
Special Permits Licensing Board met last Wednesday evening, and new restaurant group with a local owner, Bonchon Korean fried chicken is going to go into retail space there on Eaton Street. It will face out towards Olive Garden. So in the retail of Ascent, right? No, Aspire. Yep, on Eaton Street. So they were very excited. This will be their 8th location, I think. So, and it's a local owner that started this. So that's exciting. Food excites me. So, that was it for last week.
Councilor Zadi? I was invited to the Westie Winter Camp for Kids on December 30th. I could have stayed all day. They asked me for lunch and kids sat and talked to me. One young man just sat as close as he could and he was so nervous and he kept saying, "I'm just so nervous, but I have some questions for you." And their questions were so insightful and sometimes made me sad what has to be on their hearts when they should be just enjoying life. But they were getting ready to go swimming after lunch, and the other young man that sat next to me on my left side had cut his finger and had stitches in it, so he couldn't go swimming. So Dad picked him up. But on the way out, he must have told his dad that the mayor was there because Dad came back. And he just, for Parks and Rec people listening, he just said, "I've been to lots of the things in different cities for kids, and you're the best, and you just need to know all of our workers just do a great job, and he just went on and on. So I wanted to pass that along. City manager took my invitation and came to youth advisory panel on Thursday night, and they loved him so much. They said, "Are you coming back?" And he said he would. Then on Saturday, we had board and commission interviews, had great insights there too. It's always interesting to see, again, how people see things always. It hasn't failed in 20 years. The trails open space is number one on people's hit list and feeling like a small community. So great interviews, and thank everybody that did that. I know we're 4 minutes until we have to go in. Do you want a list from people of what they want, or do we do it first thing when we get back?
We do it first thing when we come back to post meeting.
So post meeting, we'll go over list of things you'd like to think about what we do for our outreach, and then we'll go over the letter to our representatives, and then we'll go into executive session. Okay, you've got a couple seconds to run and do whatever you need to do. Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott. Counselor Emmons.
Present.
Counselor Azadi.
Here.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
Counselor Nermella.
Here.
And Counselor Seymour.
Here.
That brings us to minutes of December 19th. Do we have a motion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the December 19th, 2022 meeting as presented.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of December 19th as written. Are there any further discussion or changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That brings us to public comment. And while you're getting that ready, I will just remind us that everyone that comes to the podium has 5 minutes. Disruptions are prohibited. Any talking or whispering, please go outside into the hallway. We have a meeting to run here tonight, and we'd like to not have any interruptions. Threats and intimidation are prohibited, signs are prohibited, and during a council meeting, council members shall endeavor to refrain from electronic communications on subjects at the meeting.
We have 0 emails, 0 voicemails, but we do have 2 speakers signed up to speak live. The first speaker is Alan Farb.
Welcome.
Evening. 2 items that are related to the city's homeless. First, regarding the comment to council and public at the December 19th, 2022 council meeting that Mr. Freitag had made during his city manager's report that regarded the proactive, direct outreach efforts of our 2 really great homeless navigators. And it was with regard to the then upcoming severe freeze. And I quote Mr. Freitag that they are out there right now issuing motel vouchers. Perhaps that was a misquote or misunderstanding when Mr. Freitag noted that the navigators were out there right now, because I understood his statement to be otherwise. As both navigators, I understood, had expressly limited in a recent street outreach leading up to that time, as they both had alternately been ill and primarily working from home. And they were only able to reach any homeless who happened to have working phones. It was only after that city council meeting and Mr. Freitag's that I learned it may have been the park rangers, not the navigators, who might have been making personal contact. And frankly, I'm unsure as to whether park rangers issue motel vouchers. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Second, and what I primarily want to address tonight, is for you and the public to know how exceptionally well the city, through its parks, recreation, and libraries personnel, as well as its emergency response divisions, how skillfully, impressively they reacted and quickly, efficiently, and humanely in setting up an emergency warming center at the MAC in South Westminster. And that began on late Wednesday afternoon, December 21st, just 2 days after that council meeting. And that was the very late afternoon day when the temperatures, if you'll recall, dropped nearly 45 degrees in a matter of less than 30 minutes. And then they plummeted to double-digit sub-zero temperatures overnight throughout the following Thursday. And I know how cold it became because I was out that Wednesday and again that Thursday morning trying to make in-person contact with as many of our unhoused. And that included a mom and her 2 preteens, a man and his dog shivering in a non-running RV, and even looking for one of those men that for Seymour had not long ago mentioned who squatted near his place of business. I did not locate him that night, so I hope he's okay. I know on that Wednesday, our homeless navigators and parks rangers were looking for and alerting people on the street. I even ran into a team of 3 rangers at one encampment on that Wednesday. I even had 2 city residents contact me directly to ask if I could check on a potential at-risk unhoused person, and one of whom was that shivering But through the incredibly quick actions of one of our navigators, he received not only motel accommodations throughout that harsh weather event, but she arranged a car service to get them to the motel. If you could have seen the sincere gratitude in the face of that shivering man, just knowing that someone cared. So even with that powerful, concerted, and quick effort, we might not have reached all who needed to be contacted and sheltered. And I just learned this evening that I believe it was 45 people did get into the MAC during that period. Congratulations on that. And there probably were some people I know who did not take advantage of the warming shelter, but I want you to please realize that that event, that Wednesday night and Thursday, that lives were indeed saved thanks to how quickly, professionally, thoughtful a cadre of our city employees acted in just about 36 hours time. So in other words, and on behalf of our unhoused residents, thank you.
Thank you. Speaker is Michael Civitano.
Welcome.
City Council members, thank you for having me up here. I just have two things I'd like to bring light to and just bring to your attention. The first thing is I'd like to say that the gym facilities here and the fitness and recreation facilities are second to none. They're really great, well kept and well cleaned. The staff there are always friendly and polite. I did ask though if they do have a veterans discount program, maybe 10%, something like that. They informed me they don't, and that I should bring it up to the City Council. So here I am bringing it up. As a military veteran myself, especially with the economy being so tight right now, sometimes it might just be a few dollars for a veteran to get into the gym for a month or yearly pass that really makes a difference. So I don't know if that's something that you can action on or potentially look into, but I think that would really help out and actually get more people into the fitness centers because, like I say, I do see a lot of veterans there, and they really do appreciate the clean facilities and the really friendly folks. The second point, unfortunately, is a little more, I don't want to say grim, but unfortunately, at 9340 Street, there is a house that is vacant. A gentleman lived there. He passed away, and they did not find him for about 3 months. It presented a toxic situation inside the house. So I'm sure you have some ailments to where you wouldn't get into a house without a mask or respirator just because of that. Recently, this house is for sale in the city, and I don't know if it's the city or the county that oversees that. But I'm a little concerned that it is, I don't want to say condemnable, but just a step before that. I mean, looking on the website, it's had offers rescinded. And then the other issue is that other neighbors in our kind of cul-de-sac there, they noted that I guess a realtor came through and was a little more forthcoming with information that there is, wild animals. There's a hole in the floor. You can see on the Zillow, I guess, listing. There's rat droppings, rat urine, mice running around the wall. She can hear it. And she says you walk in and you can smell that someone passed away there and it's just not clean. That being said, the neighbor that did mention they're having pest problems and I'm having pest problems as well. Not in my house, thankfully, but in the garage and around my property, just right across the fence. And, my dogs go after them. That being said, I do know we're about to live back there and, wild animals, etc. But I do think that this house is kind of, I don't want to say a breeding ground, but, since there's no one living there, they can kind of just sneak in and live there and continue to procreate and then continue to cause the issue. So I'm just wondering if there's anything potentially that the city council can do to potentially remediating that, just because I know a lot of rats and mice carry really bad disease. There's kids on our block. They're always out there playing in the dirt, playing around. And so, you don't want one of them to pick it up or someone's pet to pick that up just because there were some newborns. Your dog gets out and comes back in. You don't know what they had in their mouth and, just travels from one to another. So I would really like to see if the city council can do something in regards to the vermin problem for some of the folks living there. And then the final thing is we're on a cul-de-sac, so it's kind of difficult to snow plow through that area. But I have noticed right off 92nd, all the Pier Streets and then 94th, it kind of just plows through and leaves a huge berm going into the cul-de-sacs. And so you hear cars bottoming out. And the other issue is that it really freezes over there. And so right in our cul-de-sac, it's very, I wouldn't say steep slope, but if you walk out there and you're not paying attention, you're going to slip and fall. And that's like right on the street. And so we have to kind of break up the ice. But the thing is, no vehicles come through there. And I understand it's kind of hard because if you do plow through, you're going to plow people's driveways in. But that is a concern that I have seen some residents kind of slipping and almost falling, and myself almost falling in my driveway. So that's really kind of the only things I want to bring to your attention, and hopefully, get an action plan to alleviate those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the person we had signed up.
In case somebody came in late and wanted to speak, is there anyone that did not sign up to speak? I saw you outside, so I thought you had signed up.
John Palmer. I'd like to just a minute make some comments in regards to the parking discussion that just went on in the side room there. First off, going through community services or community, whatever that department is, you can't get a hold of anybody there. No matter what the issue is, you have to call and leave a message. Well, some of these parking issues can't wait 24 to 48 hours. They need to be addressed in a timely fashion. If it's after hours, if it's on the weekend, there's nobody there to take care of it. Whereas in the past, we've always had good luck with the police department. When it's a major safety issue, they've come out and addressed it. So I don't believe that this mandate is a one-size-fits-all. I say there are situations after hours and on weekends that are safety issues to the public that need to be addressed in a timely fashion, not 24 to 48 hours. So something to think about. Hopefully you can somehow make that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? That brings us to city manager's report. Mayor Freitag. I mean, Mayor, sorry, city manager. I demoted you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, ladies and gentlemen. Give you a quick update on some things happening here in the community. City update, first of all, Front Range Community College COVID-19 testing site, which is over near the college. That's actually going to close on January 15th. That's administered by the state, and there are 20 test sites across the state that will be closing. That's one of the ones that's been selected to be closed. And so as people want to get tested, if they don't have at-home tests or other options, there is a website where you can go to log in and find out where the closest test site is in your community. So I encourage folks, we'll make sure that we get that posted on our website for people to have access to. Next thing is it's been a difficult 2+ weeks with snow, ice, extreme temperatures, and frankly, the condition of our roads and our sidewalks are not in the best of shape. I would just ask the community certainly to be patient with the city as the city gets out to clean up the streets, sidewalks, trails, etc. But we also got to ask the community, if you have a sidewalk that you're responsible for, we really need you to spend some time making sure that you keep that clear, because that's how folks can traverse the community without having to walk out into the street. And so we would encourage folks to do that by our city standard. That's supposed to be done within 24 hours of snow-related weather events. And our code enforcement team was out enforcing 100 snow and ice related sidewalk issues that were identified. But again, that's just for public safety, and we ask folks to help us with those sidewalks so that the pedestrians moving across the community can get to their destinations safely. An update real quick on Sheridan Boulevard underpass project. So they're going to backfill the remaining underpass on the east side of Sheridan Boulevard for asphalt paving, and then installation of some conduit for the underpass lighting, and then street and pedestrian light poles to be delivered here soon. But again, we're on track for that project to be completed this spring. So moving along steadily. Next slide, please. Some Westy wins. Appreciate those that came out from the community, and certainly our city police department and all of the volunteers who wrapped over 1,600 gifts for children in our community. And then our officers went out and delivered gifts to 100 children. I wrapped a stack of presents, just like the mayor did and others. Frankly, that child was going to have a very, very nice Christmas. And so what a wonderful program. Thanks to our police department, Chief Halbert, for leading that effort. Passport acceptance services. This was news to me. I didn't realize that we did this as a city, but I think it's a great service to provide. And that is the city will work through passport acceptance services. They did that in 2022 for 839 customers. Pretty nice thing. You can set up an appointment Tuesday through Friday, and there are appointments that are done in Spanish, which is a nice addition. And you can learn more at our city website /passports. And then our sustainability office has been doing a great job working in partnership with Energy Outreach Colorado. They've provided energy efficient retrofit sets to 7 low-income homes in 2022, which reduces energy bills for the individual families and certainly improving their quality of life. And so we appreciate the efforts of our sustainability office and certainly our partners at Energy Outreach Colorado. Next slide. Today, for our law enforcement professionals, congratulations and thank you for your service. Today is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. It was created in 2015 to express gratitude for officers in the United States and in support of their services. Community members are certainly encouraged to thank law enforcement personnel for their work. There's a website there that you can access to learn more. But I would ask the council to join me and anyone else in saying thank you to our law enforcement officers that are here taking good care of us tonight. So please join me in a round of applause. Next slide. And then just a great news piece of information for our city workforce, and that is that Brian Hogenclass has been selected as our court administrator. He's recently promoted to that position. He served as our probation supervisor, counselor, and residential care facility, a graduate of Lead Metro North Leadership Program, and a member of great things for you. And could you join me in congratulating him? Next slide, please. And there we go. Some things to know. Inclusivity Board meets this Wednesday, 6 to 7:30 p.m. That's a virtual meeting. Parks Rec Library is an open space advisory board meeting is 14, 7 to 11 a.m. That's at the Brow property, 10001 Alkier Street. I think I got that right. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is Monday, January 16th. City administrative offices are closed. There will be no council study session that night. Special permits and license board meeting Wednesday, January 18th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. City Hall, City Council chambers. And then our next City Council meeting is Monday, January 23rd, 6:30 p.m. Right here in City Hall. Next slide, please. And as always, encourage you, the community, certainly anybody who wants to make contact with us. We are happy to have a conversation with you, answer your questions, provide you guidance, point you in the right direction. Please contact us at the City of Westminster. Specifically, you can contact the City Manager's office. I tell you all, Happy New Year. It's great to be here in 2023. You can call my office at 303-658-2006. Email me directly at mfreitag@cityofwestminster.us. And you can follow us on any of those social media links. Notice I took a pass on trying to remember the fourth one because I always forget that. All right, any questions? That's all I have this evening.
Any questions for City Manager? Thank you. That brings us to council reports. Anyone? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. First, welcome back to council. This is our first meeting of the new year. So I appreciate anybody who showed up or those folks that are listening online. One thing I wanted to bring up, this last Saturday, council did boards and commissions interviews. And so We do that at least once a year in order to fill the boards and commission volunteer positions that we have as a city. And so we had an ask of a resident about, traditionally those have been done in executive session, meaning you don't get to hear those. And there was an ask about doing that as an open meeting. And I wanted to at least bring that up to the council and welcome a conversation and potentially get something on the books for us to have a study session discussion about whether or not we want to change that, because it sounds like there may be an ordinance change from the information provided to us. I did follow up on some of the information provided by the resident who asked about it and talked to some of our neighboring cities that it sounds like traditionally they had also done those interviews in executive session. And for transparency reasons, they've opened those up. So I'm hoping that my colleagues would want to at least entertain a conversation about that and see if we think that that would benefit those interviews and transparency with our community. The other thing that I wanted to say is a personal thank you to the law enforcement folks out there. I know that we did that as a council. The mayor and I got to visit a handful, couldn't make it to all of the different roll calls through the holidays, but I know that between the police and fire service, you all had to continue to come to work through the holidays while we got to enjoy ourselves. So hopefully you got some family time in too, but I wanted to make an extra thank you again now that we're on the other end of the holiday season. So welcome back, everybody. Looking forward to a good 2023, and that's it.
Counselor Baker?
Thank you, Mayor. In the process of making New Year's resolutions, you need to have self-reflection, self-criticism, courage, and optimism. Of course, if things are perfect, there is no need for resolutions. I do not think anything in my life is perfect. I hold the opinion that everything can and should be improved. And while I have optimism to really devote time and effort in attempting to improve, if the goal I am attempting to improve involves another person or multiple persons, the first step is really communications with those persons. As my council colleagues know, and most likely anyone who listens to council meetings knows, I am very frustrated with the work that Westminster has engaged in at the new downtown. I am completely untrusting of staff reports on the new downtown. I basically skeptically view nearly every item of information reported about the new downtown. But I do not think that I have ever shared the reasons why I have these feelings. There is a colleague on council that has given me some of their time and a large measure of their patience to listen to my objections about the new town. I really greatly appreciate and of the respect them for that. Because the past is beyond our ability to change, they have suggested our time is better spent on choices about the future. They do not know the reason for my intensity about and my addressing of the past. Unfortunately, I've never told them why. I will fix that tonight for them and all of council tonight. Over the last 9 years, I have studied Colorado Revised Statutes 3125, sections 101 through 116, urban renewal. I have really participated in the education that the Colorado Municipal League provides. I have spent a great deal of time in independent research, and I have published my research on the subject. It is available on the Independent Institute website, i2i.org. It is titled The Empty Promise and Untold Cost of Urban Renewal in Colorado. As I reflect on my understanding of Colorado law, I am left with the conclusion that the city of Westminster was corrupt with the URA designation of the new downtown. This really corrupt decision was made to take the rightful taxes from our sister governments to advance our economic development.
using URAs for economic development is not allowed under the urban renewal laws as I read them. This decision we made at the new downtown was never about addressing slum and blight. There was never a growing menace, and I put that in quotes because it's from the Colorado law. There was never a growing menace to Westminster and the state of Colorado. There was never a time in Westminster and Colorado when, quote, endangered by areas which are focal centers for disease, promote juvenile delinquency, and consume an excessive proportion of its revenues because of the extra services required for police, fire, accident, hospitalization, and other forms of public protection, services, and facilities, unquote. I will not tolerate or excuse corruption in government. But my conclusion is far more than evaluation about history that cannot be changed. Many of the individuals that really prepared and recommended this really corrupt decision for council to make about the new downtown are the same people that we entrust today. If I reject the work and the ethics of these individuals then as really deficient and leading council to make a really corrupt choice, why would I entrust those individuals with the scores of protection, projections, small decisions, and judgment that will impact into the future? Upon reflection, I owe my colleagues on this council an apology. For the last year, I thought I was being forward-looking and avoiding conflict by really focusing on objective, provable, concrete problems at really contract standards by cost shifted to taxpayers and to clerical mistakes on reports. Please accept my apology. My primary objection to the new downtown is that Westminster abused the enormous discretion that city leaders have and cannot be challenged in our legal system. Westminster's abuse of discretion can only be challenged by a member of City Council. At the really suggestion of another colleague, I must clear up any misunderstanding about the view of competence, my view of the competence of city staff. I view city staff as highly competent experts, far more experienced and knowledgeable than myself. And that has been a major frustration for me. I have lived an ethic that requires experts to take as much time as needed of the support people that rely on experts' advice so they can make decisions. For really 38 years, I practiced retail pharmacy. I took as much time as any patient needed to have confidence in the medicine their doctor prescribed. I have even sent patients back to their doctor when needed. I assumed the same ethics from the experts that really recommend council on really decision-making. This council is solely responsible for government decision-making in Westminster. I am completely supportive and comfortable with the majority rule in council decisions. However, before council makes a decision, I implore my colleagues to bring to full life the values we claim. I see the intent of having 7 members of council is to have several points of view and to engage in vigorous, inclusive, thoughtful discussion. To do that, I think we need to welcome and fully hear complaints, dissent, and disagreement. Council must be more than a rubber stamp that accepts whatever staff provides. I have a concern that fear will let Westminster sink into the easiest way forward on our terrible predicament. That easiest way forward is willful blindness. Let me borrow the advice and words about obstacles that Vilasima Malhotra gave in an interview in which he advocated a difficult way forward as versus what his profession supported. He said the obstacles were fear and willful blindness. He said fear clouds critical thinking. And Westminster has much to fear of the financial losses at the new downtown. He said willful blindness was turning a blind eye to the truth to really feel safe, to avoid conflict, to really reduce anxiety, and to protect prestige. And prestige is something every human wants. Could I be wrong? Of course. Well, to change my mind, all that is needed is for any of my colleagues to explain to me the growing menace that the new downtown poses. And you can ask me the gently, such as, have I considered evidence that you find of the supportive of what I view as a corrupt decision? Or you could also say, ding dong, you're wrong, but follow with your evidence. Moreover, I am open to being convinced to an ugly choice by explaining the lack of ethical options. I recognize our choices may be constrained. So, like in medicine, instead of our choices being between a good and bad choice, they are between a bad choice, a lousy choice, a dangerous choice, a terrible choice, and the inevitable. Please talk to me. I do not want another year when we sometimes leave our meetings perplexed and upset. Thank you.
Councillor Emmons?
Thank you. Just very quickly regarding the veteran discount, if staff could get back to our resident on that. I know that a couple years ago, reading my notes, a couple of years ago, I'd asked about veteran discount as it related to Stanley Lake entry to our park. I know that we have it there, but I'm not sure about our facilities, which I would assume that we would. So if we could follow up with the resident on that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, we'll do.
Thank you.
Councillor Namilla?
I would like to second that request. So regarding the veterans discount, and then potentially pose for this for the rest of the counselors as potentially if we want to have a dialogue regarding urban renewal and have somebody come in and discuss what it should be used for, and to help us all be on the same page. That might be helpful. I don't know if that's in the context of when we maybe focus in on the downtown. I think it's scheduled for March or something like that. But that might be a useful element to include.
Councillor Seymour?
Hey, Madam Mayor, is just part of the pre-meeting update on my liaison to the Special Permit Licensing Board, but I thought I'd make it in greater public. This last week, Special Permits and Licensing, a new restaurant coming to the new downtown on Eaton Street. It will face from the retail space on the west side of Eaton Street, looking into Olive Garden. It is Bonchon Korean fried chicken, and I have it on good authority that that's pretty good stuff. So welcome another business to the new downtown.
Thank you. And I just want to mention for those that came and spoke, City Manager Freitag, you will have staff, I know you take notes, so somebody from staff contacts people about their
Absolutely.
questions. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt consent agenda items 8A through 8D.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt consent agenda items 8A through D. Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Yes.
Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
Counselor Azadi,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Counselor Nermella,
Yes.
and Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to Counselor's Bill number 1. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Counselor Bill number 1 on first reading, amending sections 10-1-12, 10-1-12.5, 10-1-16, and 10-1-17 of the Westminster Municipal Code regarding parking restrictions and enforcement to authorize the Department of Community Development staff to enforce parking restrictions.
Counselors Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Counselor's Bill number 1. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Namella?
Just had a question following up on one of the public input points is what would be, as I was looking through, again, the ordinance, see if I missed it, but what would be the hours of response for this?
We could have community development come forward and respond to the hours for service. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor and councilors, Wally Burgos, Parking and TDM Coordinator. Are you looking for hours of enforcement? Or what particular hours are you asking for?
I think the specific comment was about just having somebody to call and potentially, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a combination of, would there be as much of a responsiveness, and then, yeah, what would be the hours of it?
Yeah, we are our staff that's responding to parking issues right now follow City Hall hours. We are open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But we continually monitor our contact outlets out there. So when situations arise and we get contacted, we do address concerns even when they come in over the weekends and holidays.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't know if this is going to be for you or potentially the police department. I think what I heard from the public comment question was really around like if it's a safety issue. And in the pre-meeting, I had brought up the fact or asked the question if the police department still could respond. So I imagine if it's a question of public safety kind of parking issues, then the coverage might bleed over to the police department, or how would that work? Because I think the intent of the question, I think, or at least what I'd like to get at from Councilor Mella's question, jump off point, is to make sure that there's 24-hour response if it's a safety concern regarding parking.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilors, Norm Hobbert, Interim Chief of Police. Mayor Pro Tem, that is correct. I mean, if there's any safety or life issues, absolutely call the non-emergency police line, or you can call the emergency 911. If it's that big of a deal, we will absolutely respond and make that assessment there. And then if it needs to be followed up with, we will absolutely take care of it, or get our forensic code enforcement involved from there.
Great.
Yes.
To follow up, not to jump into your guys' lane, but I know like in some of the city lines, when we call in, it makes those recommendations. So I imagine if there's like a parking line, it would make that recommendation so that citizens knew. Perfect. Thank you.
And we can also make that recommendation on the dispatch phone tree that is currently in there. Once parking is up and running full staff, we can make that recommendation there. So if they're calling our line, they can be diverted to community development for the non-emergency or non-life threatening deals. And then if not, they can stay on the line.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hang on, there might be more questions. Oh, Councilor Baker?
Right. We run our parking as an enterprise fund, correct? Okay. So isn't the point of an enterprise fund is to take the fees and monies charged to the parkers to pay for the expense of the operation?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it's like our water utility fund, or it's like the golf course fund. Okay,
That is correct. You have to understand that this is a fairly new enterprise fund, and the revenue is growing, but it's still not self-sustainable. When we set out to establish that enterprise fund, that was before the pandemic hit, so there's definitely been some significant changes on a lot of businesses, and parking is one of them. So we continue to grow revenues from parking operations, but the reality is that it is not a self-sustaining operation at this time.
Right. And if I read the budgets correctly, didn't we lose roughly $500,000 each year for the last 2 years?
I believe we had this discussion during a presentation that we had back in October 3rd. And, my answer to that question was that was the investment on the parking operations. And that involved, not necessarily only enforcing parking, but also operating and maintaining parking facilities, parking lots, and parking garages. And, those are very vital infrastructure that require maintenance. There is elevators in the parking facilities. There is, trash management. There is general maintenance that needs to be completed in those facilities. So that is a significant portion of the expenditures for the program.
Right. I understand all that. But my head scratcher is, how are you going to make money? This would expand your responsibility and reach to the entire city. So how are you going to make money from the entire city where the parking is free?
I would say the intent of the program is not necessarily to make money. It is to respond to community needs. So, when we will cross that bridge when we get there, but our intent with this program is to respond to the needs of the community. It's the ability to respond to the needs of the community. We are also being liaisons to other needs. There's been a lot of discussions about, homelessness in the city, and, the staff that manages these facilities also facilitates, that bridge to provide resources when we encounter those individuals in the parking facilities. So that's, another aspect of what we do when we're out there in the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Emmons?
You may have, you may have answered this as I was looking at my notes, so I apologize. But on our police app, we can report like thefts and parking. How does that, do you reroute it to community development? How does that work?
I have to get you a better answer. I'm not exactly sure today. Right now, the parking does come through on our app to the police department. I think that's something behind the scenes that we can have rerouted to community development with our friends in IT.
Okay, as long as we have as good a service with the app, I would be amenable to that.
I will look into that and get you a better answer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
My only question was with adding to community development, this whole piece, are we going to be proactive and have somebody out there looking for things, or is it going to be more of a somebody has to tattletale on somebody or call it in? Are we going to be out there searching with our own eyes, or do we have to wait for somebody else to do it?
So it will be a combination of both. So we're adding one additional parking enforcement officer that will be out there proactively observing what's happening in the community and responding to their observations, just like the police department does today. But we will also address reports from the community, from other city staff. We have a great partnership with our colleagues in the code enforcement division. So there'll be additional eyes for us to collect information and address issues as we see them out there.
Thanks. And as for the city manager, as soon as we get that designated phone number, whatnot, can we get that out to residents and people? And I was even thinking, it's been a long time since we just have the general number for the police department for non-emergencies. And now if we have this, if we have a number for the homeless, I mean, we need to really think through for what needs are in our community anymore. And if there's a given phone number, we maybe need to think how we can strategically get that to people. whether it's the utility bill that everybody gets, whether it's through the Parks and Rec and it's on that inside page with where our faces are, that has that. There's a lot of things that touch all of our community all the time. So any ways we can think creatively, not having to spend more money, but just getting those numbers in people's hands would be good.
Like 658 Park, P-A-R-K, Mayor.
And
But-
658 snow.
Right, I like that one too. So, yes, noted, understand, we'll make sure we figure out the best way to communicate this on a regular basis, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, just
Yes.
like on that, Denver has a 311 number that you can just call for anything. So, I mean, maybe if we have so many services that it could just be consolidated into one.
Thank you. With no more questions, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nermella.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
And Counselor Baker.
No.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to resolution number 1, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 1, waiving the requirement to underground overhead utility lines with the redevelopment of the property located at 4001 West 76th Avenue.
Counselor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass or adopt resolution number 1. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know that we all received an email today about potentially putting a pause on this, and I don't know that that is realistic, but I think that the questions brought up in the email is something I wanted to ask tonight and address. And so it's around the parking, or not the parking, stuck on parking now, the utility undergrounding fund that we get from Excel. And we know over the years we've talked about this, but the subject got my mind running, and I'm trying to remember a time where there was one of these instances with the development where we didn't offer a waiver. And so part of the history that was shared by the resident with me multiple times really is, there was a commitment by the city at some point to get the more historic part of town where things are overhead undergrounded. And so I guess the question is, are we continuing to kick the can down the road? And how can we actually come up with a measurable, mapped out plan that we can, be timed and say, here's when it's going to happen? Because, it does give me some pause to think, okay, well, when we talked about this before, we said, okay, well, the rest isn't going to happen now. So why are we going to make them? Well, when is the rest going to happen? Because there was a commitment from the city to do that. And I think that if we're going to make that commitment and have it on the books, we should either be serious about it, or we should be serious about the fact that we're not really going to do it and stop having to go through the trouble of doing waivers. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion.
Absolutely, and I've asked Community Development Director Downing to, talk the council through the program, and then I think the number of potential sites that are across the community and what those priorities, might look like. I think, in our internal discussions, the waiver is most appropriate in this case because it would be an incomplete undergrounding on the property, which makes no sense. So the waiver in this case is appropriate. But I think that the Community Development Director really needs to, kind of roll this one out a little bit in some more detail. So please.
Thank you. Dave Downing, Director of Community Development. I won't try to give you a complete history of this program, but I think for listeners who probably don't have any idea what we're talking about, I'll quickly say that there is a franchise agreement between the city and Xcel Energy. Actually, I believe it's called Public Service Company of Colorado still. It's renewed every 20 years. One of the clauses, and the main purpose of the franchise agreement is to give the company permission to use city rights of way to put their facilities. One clause that has been in the franchise agreement for at least 40 years is that as partial payment to the city, 1% of the revenues that the company collects within the city boundaries is deposited into a fund for the purpose of enacting undergrounding projects for lines were installed overhead probably decades ago. And so that's what we're talking about here is undergrounding program using money gained through our franchise agreement with Xcel Energy. There are at least dozens, if not hundreds, of opportunities where we could use 1% fund to enact undergrounding projects. As you might imagine, the vast majority are in the older part of town. Currently, the big project that we're working with Xcel on is to underground the overhead utilities along both sides of 72nd Avenue from Sheridan to Raleigh Street. If we ever have any dreams of improving the pedestrian facilities along that stretch, it starts with undergrounding the overhead utilities. That is a large, very complex project that is going to take some time to complete, and it's going to take a lot of that 1% money balance to pay for. Like I said, we have several dozens and dozens of other projects, and it's just a matter of trying to find the ones where you can get the most bang for the buck. You have to look at various circumstances, various facilities, electrical facilities some are more expensive than others, just trying to stretch the dollars as far as we can to provide the most aesthetic appeal. And we continue to do that.
I appreciate that. I guess the general ask moving forward is that we as a city actually come up with a plan that's called a master plan. Not looking for consultants or anything. I think we have the expertise in-house that we could come up with the list of whatever they are and start prioritizing them so that, 10 years from now, when nobody that's back here is here, that there's a list that says, here's what we're doing in a plan. Ultimately, that could be adjusted throughout time, but I think it also would hopefully be something the community we could even potentially publish on our site so that they kind of know what we're thinking is next and potentially even lobby if they think that, there's other priorities. I think it would go a long ways, as well as it just feels like a more purposeful way to use those funds.
We'd be happy to do that. Also, again, I know council is aware of this, but again, for listeners, I might add, it's not like we're fighting a losing battle here in that many, many years ago, the city code was revised to demand that new developments underground their utilities. So that's why you have most of the undergrounding needs right now are in the portions of the city that were developed before that code was enacted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Seymour?
Just a comment. This would be the only silver lining on Xcel's exorbitant rates that they're charging everyone now, where our 1% is going to go further, but borne on the backs of many.
With that, roll call, please.
Councillor Emmons,
Yes.
Councillor Azadi,
Yes.
Mayor McNally,
Yes.
Councillor Nurmela,
Yes.
Councillor Seymour,
Yes.
Councillor Baker,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
As we adjourn this meeting, we will be going into post-meeting. We have a couple of items to finish up that we didn't get done in pre-meeting. And then do we have reason for executive session?
We do, Mayor. If council would so desire, we could certainly take that vote now. But the agenda includes an executive session for consultation with the city attorney and special counsel regarding pending eminent domain litigation in Jefferson County District Court case number 2020 CV 30231 to discuss acquisition of property rights and to instruct negotiators pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code 111.3 C2, 3, and 7, as well as Colorado Revised Statute 246402 4A, B, and E1.
I will poll council to see if you're willing to go into executive session later after our post meeting. Counselor Azadi,
Yes.
Counselor Namella,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Nancy McNally, yes. Counselor Emmons,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
With that, I will adjourn this meeting and we'll take 5 getting into post meeting. ideas for outreach.
All right, so Mayor Pro Tem Councilors, we've asked Community Outreach Liaison Kit Redmer to provide just a quick overview and then to really open it up for any feedback on items that you would like to engage in 2023 so that we can start to coordinate and plan those. So this is really an information gathering or a feedback session. Okay? All right, so Mr. Redmer, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, Councilors, good evening. I'm Kit Redmer, Community Outreach Liaison. And don't worry, I don't have a big presentation for you this year. I just have, if you'll permit me, just several very brief remarks. But I sincerely thank you very much for the opportunity to chat a little bit tonight about community outreach and your vision for 2023. I know from my perspective, from staff's perspective, we really appreciate you guys putting yourselves out there for the community. As I know you're aware, communities around the country and around the world really are fraying in terms of their relationships with local governments. You can see that pretty much everywhere. And so it's really important. So thank you very much. As you know, just to frame our discussion, last year we had a number of different engagement activities. And thank you for those. We had several town halls that were well attended. In fact, for the first one, maybe too well attended because we ran out of room. But those were very successful. We also, City Council had a presence at numerous city special events, as you're aware. And you engaged a number of other places, the Civic Academy. I know many of you came out to the barbecues that we held around the city, and we really appreciate that. We reached thousands of people. And so really excited to build on that for next year. I'd like to also mention too, something I appreciate is that you all cared enough to post the questions and answers from the town halls on the website. And that was a going above and beyond because you took the time to review those. And we heard from a lot of people they appreciated that. So thank you very much. And of course, we live streamed them as well. So all that is really good. So tonight, I'm here with my notebook just to listen. So thank you in advance. One thing we did try to do in the agenda memo that you'll see is we just tee up some ideas for you. Of course, it's your call. We're here to implement your vision. But we do have some options if you would like to maybe vary it up a little bit. We could, continue to do the question answer town halls for sure. But we could also think a little bit outside the box as well if we'd like to. Maybe you have some breakout rooms at some of the town halls, or we could have some thematic meetings as well. Certainly not a requirement. It's not all inclusive, but just something to consider if you're interested in that. And if you are interested in more thematic type discussions with the community, please be aware that we did actually take a look at the community survey, as well as all of those requests that come in through Access Westminster. I should specify the ones that are associated with City Council. We didn't actually analyze all of them, but we did look at the 350 plus that City Council is copied on. And so we were able to triangulate and cross-reference, what people were saying in the community survey in terms of issues of importance, and then also look at what people are actually writing in about and what are they asking about. And so several themes came up in terms of issues that may be interesting to consider. Public safety is definitely an issue that people are very concerned about, as you know. Emergency management and code enforcement is another area people are continually writing about, as you know, as well as anything having to do with development or growth are definitely themes. And then finally, parks, open space, and any recreation issue, arts are also issues that people really enjoy talking about. So with that, I'll be quiet, pending your questions, of course, and I'm here to take your notes. So thank you.
Okay, so I'll just run down the line, and if you have your list, we'll just give them to him to make a list. Councilor Sadi.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a list, and just to give you my thinking behind it, it's when I think of communication at this scale, well, for a city like this, after a year in now, I've kind of got a feel and pulse of what people are looking for and what they would love to hear more of, I think. And this is so my recommendations from a year ago are similar, but I'd like to tweak it a bit for my pieces. Number one, every week, every Sunday, I get a phone call. All parents get a phone call from our school, my daughter's school. It's a straight to voicemail call that tells what's going to happen this week, what happened last week, gives information, events, that kind of thing. One of the constant complaints or opportunities that I hear from residents is we don't know what's going on. Yes, I mean, we put it everywhere, right? But as you know, you got to put it where they are. And if people are not going to the website, or if they're not going on Facebook, you have to touch them wherever they are. I think, and looking at the survey from last year, right? So the number one method that residents use to contact us was by phone, by far. I think it would be kind of cool and different, because I don't know if other cities do this, to have a weekly status call, voicemail to whoever signs up, that gives a resident maybe a 5-minute city manager update, right? That update you give to us, I think something like that would be pretty cool and useful and effective if that was sent straight to people's voicemails. They hear it and they know what's happening at that level, right? That exec level sort of status. So that would be cool. Second, HOA meetings. I hear that a lot. So whenever I go to them, it's like, oh yeah, we need to do this more. Can you talk to the city about getting all of you here, right? I know you all have gone through to different HOA meetings in your worlds. I think if we formalize that, we've talked about it in the past kind of, but sort of a formal schedule of various HOAs around the city that we would go and we would just listen, right? People would know that we're coming, the HOA can organize it, and we would just be there. That would be nice. 3, email. So I know that we send emails, right? But I've never received one. Do I need to sign up? How many? So what's the email list size? How often do we send these? What's in them? I think more transparency to us about what's in these emails that get sent out, just so we can see. And if it's not sufficiently, filled up with content of that level, right? That people could use, and just basically do a refresh of the email program. I think that would be nice. The town halls were great. Those 3 that we had. I think it was 3. I think quarterly might be too infrequent. And also, I didn't really like the Q&A. It was good, but we didn't get to everyone's. It's hard to get to everyone's questions, and it just feels like we're there and we're answering questions, but it's not as interactive as I think residents would probably enjoy more. So that round table, the alternate of having these town halls, but make it like breakout sessions. And maybe we each go to a different breakout session and we're there with smaller groups of people and we can more interact with them. That would be pretty useful. And also the frequency, I said bi-monthly here, so meaning not twice a month, but every other month. I think quarterly might be a little too infrequent, but every other month would be nice, and spread out, of course, around the city geographically. And last I had door knocking. So door knocking neighborhoods, meeting people where they are. So if they're not getting touched by any of these other methods that we have, right? The best way of doing it, as I always say, is to just go to the door. So if we can have a neighborhood schedule, so maybe that's quarterly or maybe that's twice a year, where we have a schedule of, okay, we're gonna be in this neighborhood, and then the 7 of us can spread out and tag team or whatever, and we just knock on people's doors and we just talk to them and say, hey, what's going on? We're here to listen. So those are my suggestions.
Thank you.
Councilor Seymour.
Thank you.
Check.
I'm on board with the town halls. I have some concerns about doing them thematically, though. I can understand how we could narrow the focus to that, but trying to meet people where they are and at the time that they're at, that might bring on some frustration. And that's part of the reason why we went to the, here it is, just ask whatever, because there had been some thematic ones, and you get people no matter what. But it might frustrate people to say, okay, well, what's topical right now is this, and you're having a thematic on that. So I would be concerned about that unless it's a real narrow one. I have no problem with bi-monthly on that. I think that will help. In the summertime, we're out a lot at other events. If we can just, formalize that a little more. I get like 3 different emails from the city. So I've signed up for them. You're on the wrong list. Yeah. So I get a business one. I get the Westminster Weekly. And then I think I get one from economic development as well. So yeah, I get those 3. But yeah, so they're out there. I think outbound calling and on the email too, the more people we can get on that. We Reach had a great program where they were doing some community outreach, and they got a tremendous number of emails as part of that too. And so, always trying to, it's interesting because we do the signups at the town halls and some people are leery of that, but that just gives us more ways to reach out to them. But to, keep that database growing, and then, we could always use them in higher need situations. You can't get everybody, some people you can drag the horse to water, but, the more touches that we can get. HOA meetings, there's been some issues. I don't want to get in the way of that, but in some cases, trying to get the property management company to even give us a contact person. But you don't quit trying either, because it's still about 65% of the homes in Westminster are an HOA. So it's a good contact point. So yeah, that was the only from something that I wanted to avoid was something that was too tight thematically, because unless we come up with something by a neighborhood, and police departments addressed that in the past where we've had issues in certain neighborhoods and they've done it just for that neighborhood. So, those are more on the fly too. And those issues come up throughout the year. So I don't have anything to add to that.
Raymond's.
Let's see. I would like us to try to find a way to communicate. I know that we live in a digital world, and I would like us to find a way to live off of a digital world. And in that, I mean that in one of our meetings with residents from our board and commission interview, she had mentioned that it is very difficult to find anything on the website, that all of our information is on the website, but it's hard to navigate. And then 2, it's very difficult to sift through what they're looking for. And emails are great. However, we have, and I understand from a communication perspective, it's hard to communicate to 1,000 different ways of communicating to get one message, right? It's virtually impossible. So the tasks that staff has at hand, I appreciate professionally. I can appreciate it. And so I would like us to really look at maybe a tangible physical way to communicate with our residents. And something that I actually miss is, it may not be cost effective, but we used to get Westminster newspapers just via mail. And I know that that could be a costly item to print. I don't know what it is in-house, and I don't know the postal rate on that. But if we could look into that, and maybe it's an opt-in feature where it's not to every resident. It's if you want email, click here. If you want a newspaper, click here. And then that way we can kind of diversify it that way. So that has been the number one thing that I have consistently heard is I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on, and it could be an age factor. I don't know. Or maybe they just don't want to be in that digital realm. So if we could try and meet for a more tangible. I know that we send out the activity book, but I will tell you frankly, it is very overwhelming. There's a lot in it. And I know that I'd rather in that case go to the website and be able to kind of click and do what I need to sift through all of that information. Again, I know it's very difficult in this world to meet people where they're at. For town halls, I think they worked very well. I think having been through on the resident side, going through a town hall for breakout sessions, there was a lot of people and a lot of, I feel like in the breakouts, there was a lot of hijacking on different topics, whereas people wanted to hear traffic over here, but they were in this, and it didn't necessarily work very cohesively. And so while I think the intent was good, just from a resident perspective, I don't think it went effectively well, or as best as it could be. I think the thematic ones, that I think, I don't think we should drive that. I think residents should drive that. And I think a good example of that I found very, very successful that you all held was the dog park and parking at Stanley Lake, because I think that was specific to them, their needs, their wishes, their wants. And you had a lot of participation in that meeting because of that. So I'd rather have it resident driven. If there's maybe like, I don't know, a certain threshold that we continue to keep seeing, that we add it onto our radar and we say, all right, we need to address XYZ with council, all of council. If council would like to attend, like we did, they knew that they were there. And after the meeting, they came up and were able to ask more questions or different questions. So I think in those thematic ones, I think it should be more resident driven, so that if we have a threshold that we are starting to see more complaints come in, that we then meet those residents where they're at, or have a thematic meeting at City Hall regarding that issue. And then I kind of like the voicemail idea. That's different. I'd also like us to maybe look at the text message option as well, just to have that as, especially if I don't, I think, and I don't know, just thinking through this, because I know that with the Marshall Fire, we had, I think it was Adams County, I believe Jefferson County has their alert systems with text messaging. And so maybe if there's a way that we can maybe piggyback off of that and see what they're doing, that might be helpful. And then, voicemails are specifically for Westminster activities or updates, and then text messages. If we need something, I'm sure that we partner with them. If we have an emergency, I know PD does that as well. So something along text message lines, because I will tell you, a lot of times I don't listen to voicemail. If you email me or text me, it's a better chance that you can get me. So, and again, you're meeting different people on their needs where they're at, which is, it's difficult. HOA meetings, again, I think, I think if they're requesting us, just have it available, that if if they're requesting us, then just shoot out an email to council saying they're requesting council be at this meeting, great. Because most times, they're there to do business and get things done. And I would be more happy to attend if I'm requested. I think adding all of these and what we do off council collectively, I think we cover Westminster pretty well. And that's just my overall take, but especially with the activities that Westminster hosts, our movie nights and our festivals, I think those are perfect opportunities for council to jump on. I would like to say the bi-monthly town halls, it would be great. However, I think it's been very difficult for all 7 of us plus to find time that all 7 of us can get together. A perfect example was this past Saturday with our boards and commissions. Not all of us could be there. And so that was, I think if we do it bi-monthly, we're going to find it harder than it is to say. So just being realistic on that. And then I think that's it. Oh, on our website, if we could do, and this is probably our, maybe I should have brought it up on the dais, but it relates to like our public notices. If we could find a way to better organize and I don't know if it's just the system in general for our website, to clearly like on those thumbnails on the main page, if we could have like a public notice page. That way it's right there, people can see it, people can just go to it, and then they know that that's specifically noted for public notices. Because I've always had an issue with, every year, I've had an issue with having the website as our main source of public information. And we've heard consistently, and even in our community engagement survey, that website is, again, not easy to access, easy to find information. So if we could have just an ability, find a way to make it easier to navigate the website and have a thumbnail that says like public notices. That way it's right there, dead in the center.
And as we heard in our interviews, if something changes and somebody comes here to a meeting because it was published that way, and somebody decided to make it virtual instead and had no way to know that, then there has to be something in place that flashes something to indicate there's changes made from what you might have first seen. And then go through, and if we need to change a link or add a link or whatever's changed, because great frustration of community coming to whichever, because our commission meetings, board and commission meetings are open to public, and they try to come and doors are locked and they have no idea what link to go to. So
That's a great point.
Not to step over, but to add to that, I mean, they're public meetings, and if we're talking about meeting people where they are, you might have residents that's their only opportunity to see it. So for me, I would like to require we have some sort of presence here at City Hall for those public meetings. Even if that means if they're virtual for whatever reason, that we're displaying the meeting in one of our rooms. I know that would be a task, but at the end of the day, we often talk about being accessible. If somebody doesn't have the means to go to a virtual meeting, we're not meeting them where they are for sure. So I'd like us to address that. I know that was kind of a byproduct of the pandemic, but at some point we need to make sure that we're giving availability to in-person for people who show up here expecting to see a public meeting.
anything else, Ms. Lindsay? Councilor Baker?
I remember town hall at Westlake, Westview, and one at Westminster High School. Was there any other?
Those are the 2 town halls, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
I think a question and answer town hall is a good outreach. I think we should schedule 4 of them, or we can argue whether we want to have 6 of them, but however many we want to have, and then we should publish that schedule and stick to it. And then we can all change our do it. I don't like breakouts. I think breakouts skew the thing, and how can all of us attend the breakout? I have no problem with the special events and stuff like that, but I haven't gone to many of them, and I've not found them particularly, when I have gone, I've not found them particularly effective in reaching out to new people. Okay, so whatever on that. This is outreach. And I think the other outreach besides the question and answer town halls
is our newspaper, the City Edition. Okay? But I find what we're doing right now is very bland. So if we could have the counselors write a column to put in it or something to make it more interesting. And I would send it to everybody in the city too.
One of the suggestions Saturday was people don't know what our boards and commissions do. So maybe highlight one or two boards and commissions and what they're doing, what they've done, and interview somebody. But just sharing what we heard Saturday.
Thank you. Great idea.
And then I think all of the council supports any of the classes we run, whether it's Civic Academy or Police Academy or Fire Academy. And I think we're all open to do that. And if you need us someplace, I think one or several of us could fill the bill, just ask.
Mayor Pro Tem.
On that note, it would be good if we did some sort of highlight or spot of people who went through those academies and continue to participate. It would be good to hear straight from residents why they think that there's value in those to share with other members. I do like I think, and I wanted to ask, how many times do we send out the Westminster paper? We do at some frequency right now, right? Do we know? Not at all. I thought we had added back to sending it to everybody at least once a year.
Twice.
So just during election season? Because I know you did during the last election.
Twice a year.
Right.
So I would like to increase that personally, whether it's an opt-in or whatever it is. But I do know that, and this is back to some people don't do the website. Some people, for whatever reason, whether it's personal choice or they don't have accessible. So, but I was going to bring up the spotlighting people who participate in the various different ways, whether it's boards and commissions, snowbusters. There's a lot of different programs that people have no idea that we do. As far as town halls, I was on council when we used to do breakouts, and I'll tell you, I've got a lot better feedback from the Q&As. But I think that there's a place and a time. So if we could, maybe you do one a year where you have topical things that are the hottest topics of the year. But I don't think people, when you're talking about outreach from the council, they like to come and ask us questions, not necessarily have it driven. And the biggest feedback that I always got, or criticism of those, were that we were driving the conversation and they didn't feel like they could come and ask. And there was kind of the hijacking, or couldn't make it to all the different areas because, whatever reason, it added some other challenges to it. One thing that we used to do that we haven't done in a long time that I did think was useful is the telephone town halls. We would do those a couple times a year. I'd like to see those come back because that's back to some people that's an avenue they could do where they can't do the other ones. I will add a caveat to that, though. I want to make sure that we're not being too controlling with who makes it through, because there's been a feeling in the past that some people never got their questions answered. And I'll be honest, people found their way around. If they thought that you weren't going to let them through, they'd make up their question and they'd get through anyway. So not that I know anybody who plays those kind of games, but if the other thought about that I brought up in the past when we used to do the telephone town halls before the world went sideways on us, was I've seen plenty of Q&A things where people are utilizing the different web platforms, and we've never done that, but that might be an opportunity to reach a different group and an opportunity for, I would suggest something like a telephone town hall where maybe the mayor moderates and we look at questions and then chat and be able to answer them. But I like the special events. I think that everybody gets different. We're no different than people. Some of us really enjoy that kind of thing. I have got really good feedback about us being at those events. I try to attend all of them and participate where I can, and I've always got really good feedback. So I hope that we continue to offer those as opportunities. And some of us, you're not going to keep us away from them anyway. But otherwise, I like what we did last year. I'd like more of the same as far as spreading it out and enhancing what we did last year because I got really good feedback.
I think this is also part of my day job. I think about this often. I think for this team, I'd like to see us, there are a lot of good ideas. I'll just repeat some of them. And then maybe add a few more. I think for me, getting us to move into the 21st century with the way that we are interacting and holding our public meetings is a preference. So I think town halls can be one option of, with the question answer, but having, yes, some other way that there's more of an interactive dialogue with the community. So we have a lot of programs now, whether we're doing these virtually through a Menti board or if we're doing something that's more of an interactive. I know we did something at one of the movies not too long ago where everybody who was sitting out there got like a clicker and, we were able to ask questions and just it helps to kind of just get people together. Could be a good icebreaker for a town hall, asking a few questions, but that are meaningful for us. I think playing a little bit with, the whole virtual and in-person piece. When I was doing, working for I did Westy Rise, but I also did the Denver version of it during COVID. And our team really dove into digital equity. And so I just happened to look up Westminster's and we're pretty good. So I'm not as concerned over, we were it wasn't even much of a blip, right, in terms of people having access to computers. So I would say, yes, let's maybe find another opportunity for a telephone town hall, but not to feel like we're severely missing a huge chunk of our people because we're pretty digitally connected in Westminster. If we do have things in person, if we can pair them with food and childcare, yeah, just like laying a taco out or Reese's Pieces, whatever does the trick to get people to come in. The one thing that we may want to think about as well is we have pretty solid this of our community is some type of minority, whether it's I think it's mostly Latino. Can we have a Spanish meeting? If we're doing 4 or 5 meetings in a year, why isn't one of them a Spanish speaking meeting?
Are we offering translation services?
We have every time.
It's a little bit different because it would say speaking Spanish. A lot of people still have that barrier of either A, understanding that there is translation, or B, just kind of feeling comfortable enough to take advantage of it and come. So that's one piece. I think taking advantage of schools is another good way to capture parents. So, if we, being over at Westminster High was great. I really love that. And being able to connect to people and get information out through schools is also a good way to get people more informed. When we talk about, I wrote so small because I started fitting in lots of things in here. So when we talk about issues of importance, whether or not we do a thematic, meeting or not, or if we have meetings with like a breakout session with lots of different themes that we've heard already, I agree with Councilor Emmons that we should be pulling from the community. I think we're trying to with some of the ones that you came up with. I think what was probably missing for me again was housing and homelessness. 70% of our residents thought that housing was an issue. I would say that that's a significant issue to address. Infrastructure, water, transportation. Instead of talking about development or growth, let's pick out what are the themes that people are concerned about. And, transportation is a huge one, mobility, traffic, revitalization. When we start to talk about, where are we growing and why? And I know that some of the community is concerned about dying retail centers. What are we doing about those? So those are just a couple of other thoughts. I like the idea of going out to communities and knocking on doors. Maybe it's just me and Obi who like doing it. Actually, I like doing that. But it's kind of fun to just go meet people where they are. So I don't know who goes to their HOA meetings. Maybe they'd go to one if we actually were going to have council show up. I don't go to mine very well. But so since we only have about 65% of our residents in an HOA, maybe there's some neighborhood organizations too that we could tap into. Like for I don't know if Shaw Heights has something. Some of these neighborhoods just don't necessarily have a neighborhood group yet, but I still feel like they should have an opportunity for us to just kind of show up in the neighborhood and hang out. And then so that reminded me of, we used to have a position for Westminster that was a neighborhood liaison. It got cut in 2010. And so that just might be something that we think about reinstating, to just, and maybe tying it in with our code enforcement, and parking teams. Because most of the time, right, it is about code enforcement. But being there and kind of just checking in on people and being a person they can contact, and that person can help navigate them through things.
Okay, I know we've got one more thing, plus we've got an attorney waiting for us. So I know because we are talking about water tonight and will be for the next few meetings, as soon as we have things that can go public, that's one of the themes I think we have to get information out. We have to get our information out of whatever decisions we come to. I think we've got to drive that train, and we need to do it as soon as we know what that is. So that was number one on my list. Seniors, we've got Covenant Village, we've got several places that are at all levels for seniors, that they have big rooms. I know, would welcome us for a coffee, something to just sit and hear what our seniors have to say. Apartments, I'm not sure. Some apartments have a community room, but still maybe summer-wise or something. The phone town halls I had in the special events where we've got police there, we've got whoever's there, we can get a tent and join in and do all that. So there's your list.
That is fantastic. Thank you, ma'am. Everyone, appreciate that. I'm going to try to put all this together, and I'll come back with the draft through Mr. Freitag if that works.
Sorry, one last, I forgot this one. Neighborhood block parties. That's something more fun. I know people want to connect with their neighbors again and just talk. And if we have sort of a neighborhood block party schedule, right, where we will all be at this neighborhood and we bring food, drinks, maybe not alcoholic, but regular drinks and food and music, where it's more interactive and we're there, but it's not like a formal thing. That would be nice to
First
build
Tuesday
trust.
of August. National Night Out.
National Night Out is a good example.
Yep.
Great point.
One other thing I might throw out. Because a lot of these things you want to ask a question and get an answer, okay? The problem is how does one choose the question? It's the problem of the telephone town hall. There's a great perception that that's a skewed kind of thing. So has any thought been given that we have a website in which people are allowed to propose questions, and then we let the people vote which question that goes to council, and then each of the 7 of us can answer that question on the website. Maybe do that, once a month or once every other month. And then it would be a published thing that all the council responded to, and the question chosen by the people putting in questions. So
That's a great idea. I don't want to get too far ahead of my bosses here, but sir, we are looking at staff at different online platforms, actually. You've probably heard of Bang the Table, Citizen Lab. There's lots of tools out there. And so one of the things we are actually looking at, if the budget allows, of course you approve, is looking at a separate platform for engagement that I think would address some of the things that you guys have brought up tonight and could either be integrated into the website or maybe separate. We're still looking at the pros and cons of that, but the point is that it would be different, it would stand apart, and it would allow folks to do exactly what you're just saying, sir. They could leave comments, others could make comments on their comments, and then we could, address those. So we are looking at that.
And I know in our the telephone town halls, we reach so many more than can ever get to a live town hall. So I think using the two, it's just a good way to hit masses, and then those that are able to come want to come and see you in person. But anyway, thank you so much for everything. Sorry to rush us, but I know we still have a letter to approve, and then we've got to get on to executive session.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Mayor, if it's okay, we'll have Teresa come up and talk about the EPA public comment response. And this is a letter that city staff has developed. It's for your signature. Wanted to present it to the council, make sure that it's okay with everybody to send that out. Okay, and so Teresa.
Sorry to make you wait.
Not at all. I appreciate your time this evening. So Mayor Pro Tem and councilors, I just have some really brief overview to provide some context, not only for the council, but for the public that's listening in regarding this letter. So if you could bear with me, we'll get to the feedback really quickly. So again, Teresa Bocco, Policy and Budget Coordinator here with the city. We're here this evening to receive feedback from you regarding an opportunity to provide comment on the Environmental Protection Agency matter that was brought to our attention by the federal lobbyist team. As articulated in the agenda memo, on October 7th, the EPA signed a proposed determination that lead emissions from aircraft cause or contribute to lead air pollution. And then also, if you may recall at the June 27th, 2022 meeting, when we were discussing our participation on the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable, it did lead to other areas regarding citizens' concerns around lead pollution around the airport. So we did also reflect on that conversation as we thought about putting this together to fulfill council's direction in that regard. The EPA does have a comment period that is open. And if you would like to provide comment, we put this letter together in order to give us a platform to do that. The ground that we're using for this and why we provided the letter is, again, the 627 meeting and the city's strategic priority number 1, which is preparedness and resilience, building a system of intentional support for residents, businesses, and environment that mitigates risks and proactively seeks out ways to ensure the community not only endures but thrives. So with that in mind, what we're here for this evening is, does City Council wish to provide comment? And if so, we would absolutely appreciate any feedback on the letter that has been prepared so that we can go ahead and take care of that through the comment portal that's available through January 17th. So with that, I'll turn it over for you all to discuss. We'll take feedback and follow your direction.
Well, let me just open with Councilor Baker and I were at the meeting this morning at the airport, and some of the residents that, if you heard all of their comments this morning, really have done their homework, and this couldn't be any more timely. And I'm sorry, I don't, it might be not enough time to say to all of that group of RMA, the airport group, that they all should be writing this letter. I mean, honestly, but then the only thing, so I don't forget, if we decide to go with it, is there a way, I know Mrs. Wiley and there was a Brad, but it was very hard for me to hear where I sat today. They were having issues with stuff. So I know his name's Brad, but if we have that name and anyone that we know of that's been calling in with these concerns, is there a way we could at least let them know we sent this letter? So I just think they have been heard. We have been hearing them at these meetings. They have good research. The person today had phenomenal research. And I just want them to know we are trying to act in the ways we can.
We absolutely can reach out to those individuals, and certainly if it's council's direction, we can also work with the communication staff to let the community know that that council, if this is your direction, has provided this comment to the EPA along with a link so that they can read all the information themselves about exactly what this is regarding. So both of those things, if that is council's direction, we'd be happy to do. Okay.
So open it up for thoughts.
I think it's a fine letter. I think it's a very gentle letter. My goodness gracious. I would also, like the mayor suggested, I would send it to all our partners on the Noise Council, but I would say lead is not an issue for the Noise Council, even though we know it's brought because we're the only sounding board for the residents. So that's why they turn to us. But we're just telling you what we're doing as a city. And I'd send it to the Colorado Department of Health and ask for their assistance. They can make a comment to the EPA. And I would send it to Peterson and Caraveo and Hickenlooper and Bennett and ask for their assistance in this matter. Because what we're doing is lobbying here, and I think we should exercise every aspect of that.
Did anybody have any edits they wanted to make to the letter? Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're good with the letter.
Okay. We will get that out as quickly as possible for your signature. We'll have staff prepare it. And per your direction, we will let these different groups know, and as well as alert our federal delegation, enlist Mike Dino and his team to help us get that information out to them. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, everybody.
Ready for executive session?
Steve, I need to shift things over.
How you feeling, Lindsay?